Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the US Futures Weekly Chart Analysis for the week ending 5th of September 2025. First chart is the US Dollar Index Futures, and they closed a little higher this week, just fractionally higher, on an increase in volume. This market continues to trade within the range of this up bar. It hasn't really threatened to break below it. It certainly hasn't been strong enough to move above it. But one thing I will say is that quite a bit of volume has gone through over the past 5 weeks. And the fact that the market hasn't broken down suggests there is sufficient demand in the market to maintain prices at this level. And this week saw an increase in volume, and the market still closed very slightly higher. So there is demand in this market, although it appears that the market is vulnerable to breaking down. There is enough demand for the market to be moving sideways here, and that is actually significant because it does appear that this market is just waiting to tip over. But there is demand in the market, there's no doubt. If we see a proper up bar at some point, the market may attempt to move higher. So while there is a lot of bearish talk around, just wait and see how this market does react. This is E-mini S&P 500 index futures. And this market closed very slightly higher this week and above the important level. It did test for supply below the previous bar's close before just moving up and closing as a slight up bar for the week on an increase in volume and about average volume. So there certainly wasn't any weakness in that. That was a pullback, buying support came in, and the markets then pushed back up to close in the top half of the bar and above the important level. So this market still looks like it would like to go higher. It'll need favourable trading conditions, but it's more positive than negative. This is the US Treasury 10-year note futures, which pushed higher this week, significantly higher. You can see that here with this widespread up bar. Volume was reduced back to about average. So this was genuine trading. There's nothing hidden in there, nothing suspicious. And the market is moving up towards the highs of the range. This market's been trading within the range of this down bar for quite some time now. And there's been some intermediate levels within that range exceeded more recently. And now we're seeing price push up towards the highs of the range. So I expect the market will actually come up and test this level up here for strength. If it doesn't reach there and turns back, it's more likely to move lower, at least down to the lows of the range. It should really come up and tag that level at the top. It should be acting kind of like a magnet at this point now. It's so close. Copper price futures. Copper price futures continue to trade roughly sideways, consolidating in response to the weakness inferred by this pretty serious widespread down bar. We suggested at the time the market would probably move sideways in consolidation mode at this level, and that's almost exactly what's happened since. Volumes have reduced considerably, slightly increased this week, but still below the average. This market's moving sideways. It's showing no great intent to move higher, but the weakness has been contained. The market's in recovery mode and is resetting to some extent. This is gold price futures. Gold price futures have seen upside follow through. Here was last week's bar, and this week's bar really has confirmed the breakout. It's pushed above this intermediate level, above the important level. The bar standing tall and proud on an increase in volume back up to the average. This is genuine trading. There's nothing hidden in there, nothing suspicious. This market has accelerated higher and is looking really quite strong. This is a clear breakout. The chance of a retest of the breakout line for strength is reduced now. Still possible, but it's reduced. It's pushed up quite strongly, and the further away from this important level here the market moves, the less likely it is for the price to come back and actually test that level for strength. Quite often when you do get momentum ease like this, the market will just test for supply, like floating up in the air like this, and then if supply is found to be low, it'll move up further. It won't come all the way back and test the breakout line for strength. So keep your eye on it. The higher up this market moves and away from the important level, the less chance there is that price will come back and test that breakout line for strength. Silver price futures. Silver price futures really accelerated the previous week. This week attempted to continue higher, but has drawn out some supply this week, closing off its high and almost back to mid-bar on an increase and slightly above average volume. That suggests this market may come back somewhat and test the market for supply, or at least challenge the sellers that have moved in. Now, if the test for supply is done within the range of this bar, that would be pretty strong, even if it came back a little further like this before an attempt to push higher. A pullback to the breakout line here is probably more likely, but a little weaker than if the market can just come back with a shallow pullback that doesn't take very long. It's the depth and duration of a period of consolidation that'll give you an underlying clue as to the strength or potential weakness of a market. So a short, sharp test for supply and then a push higher in response is far stronger than a much deeper and prolonged period of consolidation before there's even any attempt to push higher. So watch how this market consolidates. It's almost certainly going to come back to some degree. With the close off the highs like that, it'll come back to some degree and challenge the sellers, push away if supply is found to be low and move higher again, or continue lower if increased supply is drawn out, and then it will effectively test this breakout line for strength. So watch this market carefully. I expect it will come back to some degree. Like crude price futures dropped back down to the lows of the range this week. Price has been trading within this range for some time now. It could even come back to here without any serious danger. And if price dropped below that level, there's support inferred through here as well. So it's not like the market's going to drop down too badly at all. Volume remained below the average. It was increased, but it remained below the average as price pulled back this week. And when prices come back to this level previously, we've seen demand come into the market. So watch for some demand early next week and see if it does emerge and support the market here. I'm expecting price to remain within this level, at least for next week. Into the currencies now. This is the euro US dollar currency pair. Price is trading roughly sideways, very similar to the inverse of the US dollar to a large degree. Volumes have been increasing over the past few weeks, but price remains comfortably within this down bars range. It continues to appear like it would like to go higher and the US dollar would like to go lower, but nothing's happened so far. And like I mentioned, in the US dollar, the volumes that have been going through suggest there is an element of demand in that market, and that may infer this market has an element of supply being drawn out. So just watch carefully. There'll be a response at some point, and then we'll understand what the market is really doing. British pound currency futures. This market's also trading roughly sideways, the inverse of the US dollar. Volume was quite high this week. The market did trade below all these lows and recover to close back up closer to its high and just below this level here, which is a more important level. This market also does appear like it would like to continue higher. These are all like test for supply, little mini shakeout bars. Test for supply, mini shakeout below those previous bars' lows. It does infer this market would like to go higher, which would suggest the US dollar will go lower. So we're getting mixed messaging to some extent, and that will be clarified pretty quickly, I imagine. Japanese yen currency futures. This market's also trading sideways. I guess that's not surprising. Volume was increased in this market as well as price traded below the previous bar's lows before recovering and closing at this level where the market has been trading around for quite some time now. Similar to the British pound and the euro, this market does look like it would like to go higher. You've got this level just above, which will offer some resistance if the market does push up. It doesn't look like it wants to go lower. The opportunity to go lower was presented on all these charts more recently. This market moved lower, but instead it recovered to close in the top half of the bar. The opportunity was there for the market to come back down and stay down, close at its lows down here. But it didn't. It recovered and closed back up near its high. So that suggests there is an element of support in this market. And just to look at the test for supply last week, little mini shakeout this week, it does look like it would like to go higher. I guess it will all be resolved shortly. Aussie dollar currency futures, they moved higher this week and closed at that more important level here. If you bring that line there across, which is this line all the way through there, it's an important level on this chart. It gets used quite a bit. The price has pushed up to that level this week. There was a chance it was going to push above it, but eventually came back and closed right at that level on increased and about average volume. So once again, this is genuine trading, nothing hidden inside there or nothing suspicious. I think this 65-cent level is a comfortable level for this market. It will only go higher with real weakness in the US dollar. Apart from that, I think we're sideways through here. I don't think it really wants to go higher, but it will do so if the US dollar does break down. Bitcoin futures. Bitcoin futures closed higher this week. The market came back to this level last week, which was an important level as the market was moving up towards the all-time highs. This week saw some demand emerge, although volume suggests it wasn't particularly strong demand. It was more a lack of selling pressure in the market and not necessarily buying support, which came in, and the markets then floated higher in response. That's generally not as strong as if actual buying supports emerge, and it would suggest that if supply is drawn out again, there's nothing to hold this market up, and it would come back. The next level lower is obviously this level here, where the market could move down to. So you're looking for increased buying support to come into this market. You've had some supply drawn out up here, and the market's come back in response. And this week, despite the fact prices moved higher, it was on very low volume. There was nothing holding it up apart from the fact that selling pressure was reduced. So just be careful in here. If supply is drawn out, the market will probably come back further. So this wasn't a particularly strong move. And just back to the US dollar index futures quickly. This is always a really important market, and it's worth finishing on. You can see all these sideways bars here. and the volume that's been going through more recently. Price hasn't broken down, so there must be a reasonable element of demand in the market, despite all these poor closes on every bar, inferring the market's weak, it's going to break down or move lower. There's got to be an element of demand in there holding this market up. We'll just have to see how strong that is. I expect there'll be a catalyst one way or another, which will either cause this market to tip over and the demand that's been holding this market up will be dumped and this market will break down, or you'll see price accelerate higher in response and break out above the highs of this bar, which the market's been trading inside for some time now. So I'm looking for a catalyst to move this market, and then we'll find out just how strong or weak the market really is. Okay, thanks for your time. Back again next week. See ya.